Welcome to the Federalist Radio Hour.
This is Evita Duffy and Sean Duffy, and this is going to be a special crossover episode from our podcast from Z to X here today, where we talk about the news of the week from two different generational perspectives, myself and my dad.
Pop culture and politics from the generational divide of father and daughter. So today we want to talk about some of our traditions. We have 9 kids in our family. Evita is the oldest. Christmas traditions, that's right. And I guess what we've done is taken some of the Duffy traditions and some of the Campos traditions from my wife and kind of melded them in to form our own traditions in our house. And maybe I'm going to kick it to Evita to kind of lay out what are our family traditions and what ones do you like the most?
Well, Christmas is always really fun here. I always feel bad for all of my friends from college. I'm a college student, and they come home to 1 or 2 siblings, maybe no siblings, but I come home and there's 8 kids. And this year we were happy or lucky enough to have my grandparents join us as well, which we'll get into later. But the main, holiday points for us are December 6th, where we celebrate St. Nicholas Day because we are Catholic. And so, we celebrate the saint, not just the secular man. And then we have obviously December 25th, where we celebrate Christmas. And then also the 6th, where we celebrate Three Kings Day. And the kids, the 3 kings usually come to our house. Just like, they do in most Spanish-speaking countries, which is something that we got from my mom.
Right, and as I was growing up, we never celebrated St. Nicholas Day on the 6th, and we never celebrated Three Kings Day, which was, again, more Spanish. And so I was gypped out of presents as I was growing up. It's just another time to get gifts as a young child and be excited about the holiday season. This time we go from darkness and into light. With the birth of Christ. You don't have Easter unless you have Christmas. So it's an important holiday that goes beyond just presents and gift wrapping and Santa Claus and reindeer and Frosty. This is about the birth of Christ. And though we have fun with those secular traditions, we always try to make sure that we understand the meaning of Christmas, which is the birth of Jesus. So when we start, though, we go through Thanksgiving, which is Thursday. But that Saturday or Sunday, the first weekend after Thanksgiving, we go out and get our tree. Now, as I've gotten older, I am from Wisconsin. I used to do lumberjack sports. I've actually contemplated, do I get a fake Christmas tree that makes it really easy? And there's been resounding no's from all the kids.
Absolutely not.
And the family. Rachel as well has said no. So every year we go out and cut our Christmas tree.
He cuts it down himself.
Cut it down, and then we bring it in and we decorate it that weekend after Thanksgiving to start off our Christmas celebration. And before that time, we don't play any Christmas music. But at the time we bring the tree into the house, we start playing Christmas music and start celebrating the season. So as we get into Advent, we light our Advent calendars, our Advent candles. The kids get Advent calendars. Every night we do a prayer time where we sing what?
Oh, Come Will Come Emmanuel.
By Enya, right?
By Enya,
the classic version.
we listen to that, and the kids will sometimes put on performances of the Nativity. And then what gets really fun is right now, because we're leading up to Three Kings Day, we listen to We Three Kings by Toby Keith, and we do our family prayer time, and then usually the kids during the song will dress up like the 3 kings and process with these little gifts to the front of our family altar and lay them down. So we do a lot of acting out performances in our prayer time.
Gold, frankincense, and myrrh, and the little ones are always like, what are these things? I know gold, but frankincense and myrrh, why? And we'll talk about that there were gifts for kings, but there's a lot of explaining every year.
Yeah. Because everybody's always new to it. There's always somebody who's little and trying to...
And getting older. Right. And at this time, Evita loves to cook as well. I should say bake, not cook. Bake. So she tries to fatten us all up where she makes chocolate pies, cream pies, and then feeds us all this sugar, which is horrible to keep your weight down. So
well, it's so fun because if I was in a household where I would feel like obligated to eat all of them, that'd be one thing. Maybe I wouldn't make as much, but because there's always so many little kids, it's like I don't have to eat any of this, and I can just have fun and bake it and give it to all of them, which is great. So we have like molasses cookies, peanut butter cookies, chocolate chip cookies. We do chocolate cake, which I wrote a story about recently, so you should go and get the recipe for that because it is the best chocolate cake ever.
It's awesome.
And the secret is coffee. So we do that every year. And Mom always makes for Christmas Eve, we always do, that's our big dinner because that's kind of a Spanish tradition as well, to celebrate more on Christmas Eve than Christmas Day. And so she makes usually lamb, and we all kind of pitch in and help out and become the sous chefs.
So we do
which is
lamb.
fun.
We do lamb lollipops, lamb chops, right? And usually, with most families, it can be very elaborate and it can take a lot of time. This year there was a 2:30 mass on Christmas Eve, so we went to that, came home, and we made it really simple. We did the lamb, which takes 4 minutes to cook on the skillet. We deep fried French fries. I bought a deep fryer to do my turkey for Thanksgiving, and it was awesome, easy, freed up the stove. So I made French fries in that.
And there's a video of that on Facebook. Wait, we did that for Thanksgiving. There's a video of us frying our turkey for
the
Thanksgiving.
first time. We didn't burn the house down either, which was really remarkable. So we did French fries. Your grandmother made croquetas, chicken, which were awesome. We deep fried those, and then made a salad. So our dinner was very easy, and it left a lot more time for conversation and playing around with the kids.
Yeah.
And then we go to bed on Christmas Eve, wake up, and on Christmas morning, lo and behold, Santa Claus comes and puts a few presents under the tree for the kids. And then we've kind of veg all day long, eating cookies and pie.
Watching old movies.
What's our favorite?
It's a Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful
Life. Of course.
Life.
It's our favorite, absolutely.
And we do like White Christmas. I gotta tell you, I hate old movies. Black and whites, you can't get me to watch them, but those two are awesome. And the snow song from White Christmas makes our Christmas playlist. So
it's so funny. So that because you're right. Like my mom and I will always suggest like, oh, this is a great movie, and it'll be in black and white, or even if it's any time before like 1975, he like doesn't like it. But this movie, White Christmas, he really loves it. He's always like, guys, like we should watch White Christmas right now. And again, yeah. And so while everybody else is sick of it, he'll watch it over and over again.
It's pretty awesome. But for us, and I think this is where a lot of families are as we go through this COVID time. We can get consumed by the consumerism of Christmas, and we're always so busy, and we're traveling and buying things and going to the mall. It seems like this Christmas, a lot more families have reflected on the things that are most important to them, which is their family.
Yeah.
And so often, a lot of families weren't able to connect or meet or gather during this Christmas season because of whether their governor or their mayor or their county executive, shut them down and had stay-at-home orders, or they were just concerned about the health of one of their loved ones. They had a parent or a grandparent that was older and they didn't want them to get COVID.
Yeah.
Or someone with comorbidities. And so as you kind of lose what's so important, which is family, you really understand that's what's really so important about this season, which binds us and connects us, is the family bonds and the memories that we share. And oftentimes we don't remember the presents we got when we were little, but we do remember the memories of spending time with your siblings and your grandparents and your aunts and uncles. And that's what's, I think, so important. And I think we've kind of come back to that in this time of COVID, of realizing that family really is the core of this season, and really the core of the Holy Family, right? This is about the Holy Family, Mary, Joseph, and the birth of Jesus, and we kind of go back to that, which is pretty cool.
So while you're right that a lot of us have had sort of these introspective moments during this COVID season, and really try to realize what's most important, but at the same time, while we might want to be with our families now more than ever, we have government and local and state and federal telling us that you should not be with your family this Christmas or this Thanksgiving, and I'm assuming it's going to be Easter too. So, that's definitely something that kind of puts a damper on that realization. You have grandparents who you can't see, and so we're going to talk a little bit about my grandparents who were able to visit us. One, Yaya and Grandpa are pretty. This is my mom's parents. They're pretty fearless about COVID. They're not too worried. They think it's mostly overblown, and for being grandparents, they're pretty healthy people. which is good. But we actually have a reason why we felt really comfortable with them coming here, and it's because all of us got COVID.
We got COVID, right? The whole Duffy clan got COVID. So one of my daughters had a friend come over who had all the symptoms
on Halloween.
On Halloween, had all the symptoms of COVID. Didn't tell us that she had the symptoms of COVID because she felt better when she came over. And she spent the night, went trick-or-treating with all the kids. And lo and behold, my daughter, who's the friend of this girl with COVID, got sick first and just felt cruddy. A couple days later, your mom got sick. And she had the chills, she had the sweats, she was nauseous. And a few days after that, I started to feel like crud, but I was only nauseous for 3 hours.
I had kind of a similar experience. But what was so funny about this is, during COVID, everyone, was freaking out about college students. Like, college kids are going to go and be wild and crazy and get COVID and then bring it back to their hometowns and infect their parents and their grandparents. And so I was home and I was in Chicago at school, and then I come home to vote and they give me COVID. I don't give them COVID. So I was stuck here at my house with COVID, and then I ended up just staying for the rest of the semester because there was not much happening in Chicago. They did more lockdowns and it was crazy. But
we were lucky to have Evita home for the rest of the holiday. She wanted to get out, but we said, no, you had COVID, you got to stay.
Yeah.
You can't go back to Chicago. But what was interesting is your brothers and sisters didn't really have many symptoms of COVID. There was a positive test, but
our littlest sister, Valentina, she's, the one who you think we should be most worried about because she's had heart surgery. She's little. She's, whatever. But she didn't have any symptoms at all.
So my 6-year-old daughter, your 6-year-old sister, one night she complained that she had a headache, and we put her to bed, and that was it for her. And the other ones didn't really have any symptoms at all. And that's what I think is important when we hear our public officials talk about COVID. We're going to get to your grandparents in a second, but when they talk about COVID and the lockdowns and closing schools, it doesn't seem like it's reality-based or science-based, because we know that, yes, it can be dangerous for kids, but by and large, so can the flu. And COVID doesn't really have an impact on kids. Now, if you're concerned that kids could spread COVID to their parents, I understand that, but then we should be able to make decisions for ourselves as family members that say, listen, if I'm healthy parents, we're healthy in the home, the other kids are healthy, we can send the kids to school, and by chance, if they got it and gave it to us, we're all going to be okay. And I might not send my kids in if, I have elderly grandparents living with us. We might have that child, do online schooling. Yeah. But that we're not, making decisions for ourselves, and we have a one-size-fits-all mandate from government, I don't think has been working for families, for kids in school, but also doesn't work with science, because the science doesn't back that up. Yeah. We also talk about how important it is. I'm going to get back to why Rachel and I had different experiences with COVID, but we've heard that it's important to get fresh air. It's important to be in the sun. And so we should be going to parks. We should be going for walks. If we're going to dine, we should dine outside. And in California, they've done just the opposite. They've closed down outdoor parks. They've closed down outdoor dining. And by the way, they have a surge in COVID cases, where Florida has kind of done the exact opposite. They've opened up. They've let people go outside. They've asked people to be responsible. They've given them the science and the best recommendations, but let people make decisions for themselves. And the results have been profoundly better in Florida as compared to the massive outbreak in California. Yeah. So can I talk about the difference that me and Rachel had?
Yeah, because I think it's super important. So he said he wasn't that sick, but my mom was extremely sick. So why is that?
She was sick for 6, 7, 8 days. And so for some reason, I had been taking vitamin D3 before anyone got sick in the house. I was taking zinc. And once we were exposed, or thought we were exposed, I started to take vitamin C as well. Rachel and most of the kids in the house don't like to take pills. So even though I'd set the pills out for them, they would take them one day, not take them the next. But twice a day I took, those 3 things. And D3 is so important. So is zinc, and so is vitamin C. But also, I had a bottle of hydroxychloroquine. And I started to take that as well. And I made a big production. It's like, I'm going to take
banned on YouTube for this.
I'm going to take hydroxychloroquine. Here I go. This is the dose I'm going to take. And I said it multiple times in front of Rachel. She never said she wanted any. Rachel's my wife. And the problem with that was that once I wasn't really sick and she was really sick, she started to complain and say, whoa, 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 what? You didn't tell me you were taking hydroxychloroquine and you didn't get sick.
Deal.
And I didn't. And literally she was mad at me. And I said, you saw that I was taking it and I wasn't going to force it on you. And so we had a multi-day blow up, but that soon passed. And so from my own experience, we've heard a lot of debate on the vitamins and also on hydroxychloroquine. For me, it was remarkable. I took it early, and the science says you should take it early if you're going to take it, because if you're into the COVID, it doesn't work as well.
You knew Lucia had it, and you were like, I'm ready to take it now.
Yep, and I had very limited symptoms. So the point with you telling you the COVID story for Christmas was because we all had COVID, we felt very comfortable having your grandparents come to the house, right? Because we weren't going to be able to reinfect them with COVID. They were able to come and actually celebrate Christmas with us and feel very safe.
Yeah.
But also, I don't know, when kids were going home to see their parents or grandparents for Christmas, were they taking precautions? Were they trying to self-isolate? Were they tested before they went home? What precautions were young people taking before they would go home and maybe see older members of their family? And what did they do to try to keep them safe?
So, I wasn't on campus right before people left for break, but I do know that, like most schools, East Chicago was having a lot of testing all over the place. It was very easy to, get yourself tested. A lot of them were taking a lot of precautions, like 2 weeks they were trying to isolate themselves in their own houses. I'm not sure how well that was working, but that's what their plan was. And I know others didn't even go at all. They just stayed in Chicago because they were afraid of giving it to their family, so they spent the holidays alone, which is sad.
And I know a lot of people who were going home for the holidays that were actually self-isolating, that were diligent on masks. There were significant social distancing because they didn't want to get anybody sick. And it's one of these points where we love our family members. We want to keep our families safe. And with good science, with good information, we'll make the right choices. I know some people traveled half across the country in car instead of flying to make sure that their older family members were going to be safe when they came home. That's what we do.
Yeah.
As free people, not needing government to dictate to us what we can and cannot do.
I think that one of the highlights of this Thanksgiving, Christmas season has been that while people are on their own taking these precautions and they're following rules and doing what they can to keep themselves and their families safe, we've seen mostly Democrat health and government officials going against their own guidelines. And so recently I wrote up a story about Deborah Brinks, who's, in part of the COVID White House task force. And she had to retire because the day after Thanksgiving, it was revealed that she left with multi-generational members of her family on a trip to one of her vacation homes out of state. And so those are the kind of things that make people go, So she's saying, don't fly, don't move out of state, stay in your own household. And by the way, multi-generational family members from two different households, which is the main point, was make sure if you're going to celebrate with your family that it's only within the family that's in your house. You're not going to see other members. And so it was that kind of thing is very frustrating for people and doesn't inspire anyone to want to follow these rules, because if it's really that dangerous, why aren't you following your own rules?
Well, I'm actually okay that she did that, that someone would leave their position because they didn't follow the rules themselves.
Oh, I'm glad that she left. She should have left.
But rules versus guidance. If you're mandating rules like Gavin Newsom or the mayor of San Francisco, but then you're going out to eat in the places that you say are dangerous, or the city councilwoman in Los Angeles County who voted to shut down outdoor dining, and right after that vote she goes to dine outdoors, it tells us that they don't really believe that this is dangerous, and they're making rules for everybody that they don't abide by, which makes us all think they're hypocrites. The mayor of Denver came out and said, listen, this was over Thanksgiving, everyone needs to stay home, no one should travel, stay on lockdown. And then he went to the airport and got on a plane, and I think he flew to Cabo, if I'm not mistaken, to meet family members. So again, this is too much. This should be, give me guidance, give me recommendations, don't give me rules. I'm smart enough to make assessments for myself. And I think, and we see this in our history, we see that when some of our liberties are taken away. They don't go away forever. You see the American people push back and reclaim maybe even more than they had before those liberties and their freedoms. And hopefully that'll be the same consequence here, that more Americans demand less government in their lives instead of, after this situation with COVID, more government in their lives. But it's going to be interesting as we look back on this time period. What impact did COVID have on our traditions? What impact did it have on our ability to reflect about what's important in our lives? And how do we change our behavior moving forward from this on how we engage with one another and recognizing, again, what's important in a Christmas season?
Yeah. I think that for me, like when we talk about what's changed, I think I've become a lot more grateful this year for things that I missed pre-COVID. So I went to the gym this morning, and thankfully the gym in our town is open, and I'm like with my mask on, because you're required to wear a mask while you're working out, and I'm like struggling to breathe because you're working out and it's hard, and you're required to have this cover over your face, and you can't get oxygen, right? So it's difficult. And so I mean, like I was sitting there thinking, like, wow, what wouldn't I give to be in a time where I didn't have to have this over my face while I work out. There's all these little things that you didn't even, like my friend, who my high school friend from down the street, she asked me to hang out, and we realized we can't go meet for coffee. There's no coffee shops open. We're kind of, we have to figure it out. She has to come here with all the kids, right? So there's a lot of things, kind of, there's a lot of things that were really great that we didn't even think about before COVID, that now I'm like, wow, I kind of wish I had that back.
I think that's a very good point. And yeah, I look at, again, even you mentioned the rules in the gyms. The question is, why do you abide by them? And why do we go into a store and put a mask on, which most of us will do? And I think the answer is oftentimes not that I believe that masks are the end all be all. Yeah. Not that I think I'm preventing anybody in the gym from, getting infected by me, especially when you've already had COVID.
Yeah, no one's gonna get it from me.
Right. I think what happens is there's a fear of social shaming. You're afraid that someone's gonna throw a camera in your face, and that you're going to, be shamed and blamed online, because you have all of these woke, progressive do-gooders who are waiting for their opportunity to pounce and shame you. And I would argue that this is a small majority of the American people, but they have really loud voices, and they're getting the rest of the population to cower. And I think that's a huge problem. And I think it's a lot of woke college students. I think it's a lot of woke Hollywood and a lot of woke folks in the media. But most Americans, again, are like, this doesn't make any sense to us. And so hopefully, again, there will be some kind of pushback on the wokeness, and let people know the majority actually of America thinks something different than what's being driven into our lives that we don't like.
Well, so I think that's one way to look at it. I think that's a good point. When I was at the gym, I definitely felt stupid having this mask on. I know I've already had COVID. I know nobody's gonna get it from me. And I realized that this is crazy. We're working out. We have to have these things over our face. We can't breathe. But the gym is obviously a private business, right? So they have to have their own rules. It's actually not, I actually think that point is right in a sense that it's the woke people who are pushing it on these businesses to keep these masks on, because I'm not the only patron, right? So I want to wear a mask. I don't want to wear a mask, but there are other people who will try and shut them down and report them if they are allowing people to be at the gym that aren't wearing masks, right? So it's a fear of the patrons themselves, actually, I think is the case for a lot of these businesses, and I actually feel bad for them. Gyms have been really hard hit, grocery stores to a lesser level, and so I'm just kind of like, okay, these guys have been through a lot. I'm not going to give them a hard time. I'll put on a mask, even though I hate it and I think it's stupid, because I think a lot of the pressure is coming from other people around them, and it's not necessarily these businesses that are imposing it on us. They're the victims just as much as we are having to wear these stupid things.
And I think you make a really important distinction. If a business says, I want to make sure that everyone that comes into my business wears a mask, okay, then I can make a choice whether I want to give them my business or not.
Yeah.
However, if the government mandates it on businesses and individuals, that's a completely different story. Now the control isn't ours, it's gone to the government. And when we speak of masks, it makes me think of Dr. Anthony Fauci. If you remember, when COVID started, Fauci said, masks don't work. You don't have to wear a mask. And there's been a lot of studies that say masks actually don't work. Again, I'll wear my mask when I go into stores. I abide by the rules, so I'm not saying I'm a non-mask wearer, but a lot of people said masks don't work. Fauci said at the start, masks don't work.
He did.
And then he switched, and then he said, oh, no, everybody should wear a mask. Similarly, he just, previously he had come out and said that to get to herd immunity, we have to have 70 to 75% of Americans who have the vaccine or have been exposed to COVID. Now he just changed that and said it's actually 80 to 85% of Americans who have to have the vaccine or been exposed to the virus to have herd immunity. And so the question becomes, why the change? Well, he had heard that less Americans were willing to take the vaccine, and so he unilaterally just bumped up what he claimed would be herd immunity, not based on science.
Yeah.
His mask conversation is not based on science.
Yeah.
And this is the guy that we're supposed to be listening to for advice and rules on what we do in COVID when it's so willy-nilly, when he's making decisions that truly impact businesses and our lives, when it's not based on any science. We heard in California, they're shutting down outdoor dining. The science said people aren't getting COVID. It's not spreading because of outdoor dining, and they shut them down anyway. It's that lack of insight into what'll work and what won't work that has frustrated, I think, so many Americans, because if there was good science that said if you do X, Y, and Z, you won't spread COVID or you won't get COVID, I think we would all do it. The problem is the science really doesn't back up a lot of what's happened in the government rules and regulations that have come our way.
Which makes us think that it's more about control than it is about safety. I mean, this is the most massive government grab that's ever happened in my lifetime, and probably everybody else who's listening. I mean, this is what we've experienced is crazy, and it makes it seem like it's more about power than it is about anything else. Because like you said, a lot of these rules are very stupid.
So, but I think there's something else about it. In America, we're very individualistic, right? Yeah. This is who we are. This is bred into the American DNA. And the most individualistic thing you have about you is your face, is your facial expressions, your facial features.
Yeah.
And when you put a mask over your face, you lose that individuality. You lose that identity that is so you, which is your face. And you become just one more person in the crowd with a mask. And I don't know how many people I've walked by that I actually know really well that I realized I didn't recognize because they have a mask on.
It happened to me today.
It's a way of saying we're taking away identity. And I hate to say it's China-esque, but you're all numbers without that individuality. And I think what makes this country great is our freedom and our individual nature in which we live our lives. And it would be a bad thing to see that go away. We talk about American greatness. It comes from that idea that each one of us are individuals and we lead our lives and our American dream however we see fit. We don't want to cover that up. Yeah,
I think that's a great point.
Thank you.
And I think that to go back to Fauci for a second, when we talk about how, it's... and my dog's now under here. But I think that there's another aspect of it too. It's not just a power grab. I think I think it is a power grab, and I think that what's really indicative of it is kind of how performative it's become. That like you said, we were kind of losing our identity, but for what reason? Because I think that because it was a few months ago that Fauci went to a baseball game. I think it was like the first baseball game of the season, and he went and he was wearing a mask. And the second the cameras were taken away, he took the mask off. So it's kind of just a sign of how performative this is and how it's not really, based in science at all.
If I can just, this was not a show to bash on Fauci, but I guess we are. If you recall, he was doing an interview, and I don't know if it was with Yahoo or a podcast guy, when he was asked about people meeting up on Tinder and actually engaging physically with one another off a Tinder meetup. And he basically said, that's okay. Take precautions, but yes, you can meet complete strangers on Tinder and be very intimate with that person. And he seemed to say that gets the Fauci blessing, but families gathering for Thanksgiving and taking precautions, that's way too much for Fauci. Again, when you lose the faith of the government officials who make recommendations, it's really bad for government. And by the way, I'm okay with that because I don't have great faith, though I served in government. I was a congressman for 9 years. I don't have great faith in the leaders of government. I have more faith in families and individuals than I do the institutions around which these rules are coming.
And Fauci isn't the only one that's been kind of making suggestions like that. I was recently looking into some of, like some local and then state guidelines that they have for sex lives for people, and they suggest that if you're gonna, hook up with someone, that you make sure to wear a mask while you do it. And it's kind of like if you're gonna hook up with someone and they have COVID, you're gonna get it anyways, whether you're wearing a mask or not. And then it's been a real. I think it's been a real overreach. Like I said before, I think that there's a lot of things that wouldn't necessarily think that the government should be giving you guidelines for, but they are suggesting masturbation is the best way to go about things. Because I think, that's the best way to not get COVID, is just to do that. And I think that that's kind of inappropriate for the government to even be saying in the first place.
I didn't hear that news story for the first time here with Evita.
Yep.
Great. But I think as we kind of wrap this up, Evita, it is important that as we've gone through this really difficult time of COVID and lockdowns and shutdowns that have tremendous impacts on people's lives, we do reflect again on what's important, which is our traditions, our families, but also our freedom. And if we don't fight for those things, that family, that freedom, you end up losing it. And hopefully, as we go through this Christmas season, there will be a rebirth of those ideas and ideals as we move forward and we determine for ourselves what kind of country we want to live in. I would argue it should be free and full of healthy, strong American families.
Me too.
All right.
Good to see you guys.
All right. Have a good one. Bye-bye.